So just returning home for a trip to see my mum in Milton Keynes. It's been a fairly productive trip. I was supposed to actually do a ride and talk on the way down this morning, but when I came to switch my camera on, the battery was flat on the camera, so I don't quite know how I managed to do that, but it's fine because I just thought, okay, I'll enjoy the ride down and instead I can have a chat on the way back up. And it's quite a nice ride down. The last time I messed up a bit and ended up on the M1 because I went too far down the A45 and ended up hitting the M45. Ended up on the M1, which I really didn't want to do. And then when I was trying to get off the M1, the A5 south was closed and I ended up having to stay on the M1 to junction 14. So this time round it's a lot more interesting, the route down. I went down via Southam and I was trying to get to Blakesley. In the end I ended up flying down past Daventry, Weedon and down the A5, but it was fine. And I nipped in to Super Sausage on the A5. Went in there, it's about 9:30. Full of bikes, full of people, and all queuing up for the sausages and bacon and whatnot already at that time. So I thought, nah, blow this, and I didn't even stop, I just rode straight back out. It just felt a bit too tight in there, but it's great to see biker meets like that, a bit like the one that happens where is it? Bassett's Pole. It's like a Bassett's Pole, except instead of being a Mackey's D, it's like a greasy spoon. So I would have probably just got coffee there. I expected it to be quieter, to be honest, at 9:30 on a Saturday morning, but obviously all the bikers are out. Maybe this is like a last blast for a lot of bikers now. Got to say, the weather is pretty pleasant. 2nd of October today. It's about 20 degrees-ish as I'm heading home this evening. And it was about, I guess, maybe 10, 12 this morning, which is fine. Some kind of fake going on over there. A lot cooler than the last time I rode to Milton Keynes, which is like around the first week of September when we were going through a heat wave. Was it the first week or the second week? And it was 30 degrees that day, which was awesome. But yeah, in the milder weather now. But this is just perfect, really. I've got a few layers on this time. Haven't got my one piece on. Decided just to go 2-piece, just for comfort. And yeah, it's fine. So dodged the just passed through the Super Sausage. But maybe next time I'll try and set out a bit earlier and arrive at the Super Sausage a bit earlier when it's slightly quieter. And maybe I'll eat a Super Sausage. Yeah, I do like those kind of biker meets. Lots of bikers out on the road. The camaraderie is fantastic, just the nod in the head. Although there's more of us these days, there's still not a super great deal of us out compared with car drivers, so there is that camaraderie. Sort of biker petrol head camaraderie, which is nice. There's not a lot of camaraderie in today's society. I think bikers are a peculiar type of people though. Every time you're out you are taking risks. You're super exposed on bikes and there's that sort of respect. I was talking about my camera. Now I'm gonna be coming into possession finally of my 4K camera, which I'm super looking forward to. And there's a bit of a story around how I've come to acquire that camera. It's not been delivered yet. How I've acquired it without paying a penny for it, which is really cool. But I'll tell you that story nearer the time when it arrives, when I take it out for a test ride. But it's the exact same camera I've got now, the Ghost X. I've got the Ghost XL side or top mounted, helmet mounted. Come on. and that's the camera I should have got, and I ended up just not doing enough research, getting the cheaper one, and it's this one, which is nowhere near good enough for riding and talking. But what was I saying? So that's the camera I should have got, but I am going to end up with that camera soon, and it's not cost me a single penny. And I'll tell you the story of that when I take that camera out for a trial ride. It's a super nice story actually, and yeah, it's a nice story. So on this chat, I've got a few things I want to talk about, quite a few topics actually, and I was wondering, like, how am I going to remember all the points to cover? Getting quite used to this format of talking while I'm riding it, to the point where this morning it felt a little bit weird not talking while I was riding. Actually, it was good at the same time that I could just focus on my riding a little bit. So like this, talking as I'm riding, talking to myself, actually feels normal now, which is bizarre. But yeah, so the first topic I want to talk about is homeschooling. So moving away from biking and bike cameras to a completely unrelated topic, but still on this general theme of freedom, I guess, which biking is a freedom activity, in my view. It's like an ANCAP type activity, it feels that way. So homeschooling, so we homeschooled our kids from the start. We chose to go for the follow the national curriculum. In my son's case, he's ended up being a year ahead because he's a September boy. If he was in the traditional school system, he would actually be a year behind where he is. So in his case, the homeschooling has worked out super well, and similarly with my daughter, who's super bright. That's the old Deanshanger school where I used to play five-side football back in the day. Used to open up the school because we knew the caretaker there. We used to have a laugh there, but I digress. Okay, I need to find my next route now. And this camera just isn't, this isn't really picking up where I need to go. That's a dead end. It's a dead end. Dang. No access. Don't really know where I'm going. I know. Where's that going to go? I don't know. But where I want to go, I think I should just tap into the sat-nav. Is that taking me down, back down the A5? Stratford Road. We're just going to try and follow this. That's a dead end. So where are we going? Anyway, what was I talking about? Homeschooling and got disoriented, so I've ended up back in my old five-a-side football place. I did check this route out and I assumed it was just going to be straightforward. Here's the issue that I've lost satellites. Yeah, it's taking me back down the A5 way, but what I want to try and do, let's go up through Deanshanger and up and around that way. So I might have to just sort of follow my nose a little. Okay, let's do this. Anyway, big digression. Homeschooling. And what I wanted to talk about was the fact that yesterday, so there's a whole crowd of people homeschooling, and I think it's increased more now since the lockdowns, and also there seems to be quite a lot of bullying happening in school. I don't want to knock the school system too much, because I know there's some really genuinely hard-working teachers. There's some really good schools, and some kids like school. I was actually homeschooled temporarily for a year when I was younger, because I hated school for a period of time, but then I reached a point where I wanted to go back. In case of my kids, like, they've never wanted to go. I've periodically checked with them, do you want to go? If you do, you can write me a 5-page essay why, and I'll let you go. But they don't want, they just haven't felt like they've wanted to go. I guess they haven't received any sort of pressure from friends to go, so they're super happy to be homeschooled. And yesterday, so there's a whole crowd of people, and there's a whole support network, and because we follow the curriculum, because we actually pay one of these companies that is kind of caters for, in the past catered for expats or people where maybe the dad was a professional who moved around a lot with work and family in tow kind of thing. And so that company was catered for that type of lifestyle. Maybe I'll put links to the two companies we've used in the description afterwards. So because we used that, we've not really super needed the support network, because we have a lot of friends. We make sure that our kids are socialised with other kids at appropriate times, and it's a horse. And yeah, so we have a lot. We follow a program. Nice horsey, and so we didn't feel like we needed to especially be part of a network. But that being said, so it's a bit different, say, for parents who have pulled their kids out of school and they don't know what they're doing. They need that support network, so it's a super thing. And what I will say is, my wife is still a member of some of these support groups, and she does get involved here and there with activities. So when they organise days out, she gets involved. So it's great. So we do actually utilise that provision. So what was organised yesterday was a sports day in Hemel Hempstead. All the homeschooled kids got together. What they did, apparently they do this every year, they hired out this athletics track, amazing athletics track, and organised a whole bunch of games on there. So things like throwing javelin, throwing discus, the relay race, 100-meter race, 400-meter race, and it was all organised into age brackets, and what was the other one? The hurdles, the long jump, everything. I was getting involved a little bit. I'm a year past my ACL being torn when I was playing football. Oh, it's lovely around here, just outside of Deanshanger here. Beautiful. Yeah, so I damaged my knee, tore my ACL actually playing football. Haven't had the op. My leg is mostly back to normal, but I do have that fear because it's so painful. Anyone who's been through that kind of injury will know what I'm talking about, and certainly I have a lot of empathy now for footballers who get that injury. With just a general more compassion with footballers and pro sports people as a general rule, really, because there's other horrific injuries as well. Normally those guys who get the injury that I got, they will have to have an operation because they're continuing with as a full-on athlete. In my case, I decided not to get an operation, and my legs pretty much returned to normal. But there's just that little bit of fear that I could pop it out whilst engaging in the sport. So I didn't play football, but I did actually run a 100-metre race. I didn't go full hell-bent for leather, but I did run it. And I did run the 400 race, and I did throw the javelin. So anyway, my kids absolutely loved it. They made some new friends. And really, my hat's off to the lady. I don't know her, it's the first time I met her, but the lady who organised this all, who's been doing this for, I guess, a year or two now, who, yeah, it just went super amazingly to plan, I think, from where I could see it. And it's wonderful. Whoa. I don't know where I am, but I'm loving these roads at the same time. Must be heading into Northamptonshire, sort of. Buckinghamshire, North Bucks, Northamptonshire. This is a nice route home. Certainly much beats the M1. I've not been down this route before, so this is awesome. I should actually try this route without talking, with 100% focus on the road. There's quite a lot of potholes. I'm actually riding quite slow as I'm talking, really. So see if we can speed up a little. But yeah, but the thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people who think that homeschool kids are weird. And there's one of my wife's friends who, she started giggling. My wife was around her house and she just happened to tell her about this forthcoming sports day, and the friend started giggling, and yeah, I'm back on the A5, which is, I want to figure out the way of getting down here without coming on the A5. Oh man. And I need to put some additional points in the sat-nav, I think, in order to avoid this road. But it's fine, it's getting late, and I want to get home before it's dark. So I did like that little route there anyway, seeing the horsey so on. And so where was I? Yeah, she's like, isn't it weird how you're just trying to recreate things that they do at school? But I thought that's just a silly comment, because to be honest, even if I think there might have been one or two kids there, at least one I can think of, who does actually go to school, who ended up at the homeschool kids event that we're talking about. But he's certainly really enjoying himself, and any kid who goes to school who ended up there would enjoy it. So it's a bit of a stupid argument, really. People that sort of mock homeschooling, and the thing that gets me is when they say, you know, if your kids are homeschooled, they're going to end up weird, they're not going to be normal. And I'm thinking to myself, is what's going on in schools what you would term normal? And again, I'm not knocking the school system, but it's basically government indoctrination school, and basically most of what you learn there is useless. They don't teach kids how to grow their own food and start their own business, which is probably the two most important things to teach your child. And whilst there are plenty of really good quality teachers, and I have some fond memories of teachers from when I was at school, you do hear about, you know, this like drag queen story time and them trying to sexualize kids and get their gender changed pre-puberty and try and get it done without overriding the parents' wishes, and then ending up getting sued by the child later as they realise that they've been mutilated. It's a very controversial subject, this, but also some of the teachers may well have a portrait of Karl Marx hanging on the wall. You know, they're just so communist in their outlook. And those of us that are sort of into the like ANCAP, crypto, freedom, anti-lockdown people, anti-narrative people, should we say, I have to choose my words carefully now on this platform. But I say anti, let's just say people that challenge this stuff. That certainly people that know about Austrian economics, Bitcoin and crypto and freedom, the corruption of the fiat system, the banking system, the everlasting bankster wars, you know, then we take a slightly different view of school anyway, and start to think of it as almost like a government indoctrination camp, or, you know, it's just trying to churn out obedient taxpayers is the ultimate goal. That, maybe that's being over sarcastic, you know, because like I say, I'm not against school per se. I'm really just pro-choice. I think the way they do it in Germany is, although their school system there is amazing, because they start at like 8 in the morning, finish at 1, which I think is brilliant. Kid has the whole afternoon. I don't know how much homework they have to do. I did spend 2 weeks in a school in Germany on a school exchange. A week or 2 weeks, at least a week. But in Germany, it's illegal to homeschool, which is totally out of order, if you ask me. It's totally out of order. I don't know why such a Nazi policy would be allowed in Germany, of all places. But anyway, that is what it is. I guess if you're German and you want to homeschool, you have to leave the country. But what I was getting to is, and I don't want to stay on this topic for too much longer, there's a few other things I want to talk about. But there's different styles of homeschooling. So whilst in the beginning the way that my wife's friend sort of mocked her for doing homeschooling and going to homeschooling events and days out that were trying to mimic what actually happens in a real school, she thought that was just hilarious. I used to feel that way about people who would unschool. So there's homeschooling. Here, these are the different styles: homeschooling, child-led schooling. And I'm sorry if you've come across this video and you don't have kids, you're a biker or crypto guy, and you can give a toss about schooling, homeschooling, or kids. But listen anyway, because you might have kids one day. So here are the different styles. There's following the curriculum like we do. Then there's child-led, where the kid decides what they want to learn, when they want to learn it, everything at their own pace, everything at their own choice. I think that's what child-led is, and I used to mock that and ridicule that. And then there's unschooling, which I totally would have ridiculed. And I think unschooling is basically about letting the kid play all day. Right, and people would say that's totally irresponsible. I would have been one of those people in the past, if I'm honest. Now I find myself, because I listen to other people talking about all this stuff, I find myself becoming much more, and this is a super long wall, toaster racetrack, much more, about 1 billion bricks in there, much more open-minded now. So now if somebody says to me they do child-led or they unschool, I'm like, okay. I try and keep an open mind, because I have heard that some people have had a lot of success with it. Child has gone on to, ironically, study at university and got a PhD, or turned into some super successful person through unschooling, through playing throughout their childhood, and then just making their own mind what they want to do, what they want to learn and study. I think it can be a cop-out. I think it could be like, you could have the parents out of their faces on drugs and unschooling the kids, and the kids just sitting there breathing in crack smoke, and in a dangerous environment. So I don't think that's what they mean by unschooling. I think it's just the parent still being a proper responsible parent, but just coaching the kid in a different way. So like I say, I keep an open mind. Some people would say it's irresponsible and diminishes the chances of the child being successful. So this is kind of still our position, that we're I guess we're a little afraid. But maybe it's just also because that's how we started out. And in the case of my son, he's only got a few years left, and my daughter, like maybe 6 years of standard education left. So we might as well carry on. And I've asked my wife, because sometimes she does struggle, especially with my son, even though he's ahead and he's bright, very clever, he's got super memory. She does struggle with getting him to motivate himself at home. She thinks that if he was at school, it would be a disaster. He would be daydreaming, and because the teacher's got to supervise 30 kids, he would be neglected. It is also possible, however, if he was in the school environment, that environment would actually discipline him into being motivated. I don't know. But so when she's been at her wit's end, as I'm sure every homeschooling parent who's, at least ones that are following the curriculum, probably do get that way sometimes, with getting the kids to motivate themselves. And even teachers, let's face it, shout at kids sometimes. When she's reached low points like that, I have said to her, well, have you thought about maybe, child-led or unschooling? Maybe that would work for him. But she's like, no. She just really doesn't want to do that. She's scared of that. So that's cool. I still think my kids, for us, this is a very personal thing, they're still in a much better position being homeschooled and following the curriculum than going to the flipping tax concentration camp. Like I say, I don't want to be too negative about it all, because some people love school, I don't want to take that away from them, to be honest. Okay, so there's a couple of things. So what I've done, I think I was trying to come to this point earlier, is I've got a bunch of points I want to talk about, and I was worried I was going to forget them all. So I don't know if I can angle my camera down and you can see my tank here, but I've actually stuck my points, like bullet points, inside a magnetic tank bag with a see-through top, so I can remind myself what I was going to talk about on this ride. Let's try and get past this car now. Whiz off. Time to whiz off. So I've got the bits of paper down in my tank bag here, so I can remind myself on the next bullet points. So what was my next point? Bulls and bears. Yeah. So going back now a little bit to crypto topics, I guess. I was going to talk about bulls and bears. Is this going to go green? Come on. Yeah. If you bought a Stradivarius violin in 1800, right? That violin, except maybe during periods of like war and famine, I don't know, maybe the price of a violin, of an antique collectible violin like a Strad, might have gone down. Although I don't think so much. I don't think Strads went down during World War II. So what I'm trying to say is that asset has just gone up in an exponential line from, let's say, someone like Bishop Hellman or somebody would buy a Stradivarius for £20,000 in the 1900s, say, the year 1900. In 1800, maybe you would have paid, I don't know, £1,000, and now that violin is worth, let's say 5 million, 2 million, 5 million. Just gone up in a straight line, and as these things become rarer and rarer, it's just going to go up more and become more and more desirable. Crypto is not like that. So crypto is like a bit like the stock market. It's, I mean, great for people that bought Bitcoin early on, if it was, who hang on to the Bitcoin. Let's say it had already reached $250,000 already. But the reality of the crypto market is that it's not like that. It's bull markets and bear markets. And it occurred to me that that's why crypto is so super interesting. Because if it was all exponential, people couldn't come to it later, and it would just be boring. So what the dips give you is an opportunity to, first of all, if you're clever and you know what you're doing, you can sell at the peak, and then you can buy when it dips. So you can make profit that way. You can keep accumulating more and more that way, and then you buy back. Yeah, you sell at the top and you buy back at the bottom. End up with actually more Bitcoin than you started off with. What was I going to say? Also, for newcomers, that like at the moment, like there's still a chance for people to get into Bitcoin. Although I think that opportunity is that window is closing, and I'll explain why. And I think, but as it stands right now, you can at the moment you can buy it. You could make it, say, a realistic goal to obtain 0.1 Bitcoin, let's say. And there's quite a lot of people out there, Michael Saylor included, who would say that's all you need to get, and then just hang on to it because it's going to skyrocket. Now, I don't have a clue, to be honest. I'm not a financial advisor, but I just know that if you compare the price of Bitcoin from now to say 2008-9 price, fraction of a dollar, it's gone up like millions of percent. So it's been probably the best performing asset overall. I can't think of a better performing asset. And yes, there've been ups and downs, and people have said, "Oh, it's over and it's a scam," but nevertheless, if you look at that graph from 2008 till now, it basically has been going up and up and up. So, but the reason why that window of opportunity might be closing now is because we have some big players making a move into crypto. So not just like the kind of inverted commas good guys like Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. I'm sure there's a lot of people that think he's not good, but personally I like the stuff that comes out of his mouth, so let's just class him as a good guy for the sake of argument. And then the bad guys, who we could say are like the likes of, like, let's say BlackRock, or these massive powerful hedge fund people who they want to turn Bitcoin into like the banking system. They want it to become a playground of the rich, and they don't want it to be what it was originally intended for by Satoshi Nakamoto out of the ashes of the financial crisis, which was to create a free finance system. This was when the world was collapsing and all the banks were being bailed out back in 2008, if you'll remember. You're around at that time, and old enough to remember that. So when BlackRock and these really super big powerful companies start to make their move next year and lean on the SEC in America and get the spot ETF approved so that they can muscle into it, and so they can then start sucking the money into Bitcoin, which is what we mean is the people who have lots of money, who until now have been hesitating to buy Bitcoin because they're worried that the SEC may deliver an adverse judgment, yeah? and then their Bitcoin may become worthless. All this totally defeats the whole purpose of Bitcoin, by the way. Yeah. Read the Bitcoin white paper. It's nothing about what Satoshi had in mind. But my point being, if these big guys muscle in, then there's a lot of people in the crypto, the bloggers, crypto podcasters, who are saying, it's going to go to 100k, 250k, and 1 million and beyond, because these big players are going to come in. Then the big money spenders will then have confidence in that market. They'll start to make their move into Bitcoin. The smart ones already did years ago, anyway. But these are the ones that want to be led, by, all the smart people by then probably will have disappeared into Monero. But yeah, getting back to my point, that now could still be a good time just to buy even just a small amount, even just like aiming for 0.1 BTC, which is what Michael Saylor is saying is all you need. And from that point, that should be enough to set you up, basically. And then when it goes really up, you can sell and go invest in some other projects. So I think for those that are able, this is a beautiful little village, that are able to purchase a bit of Bitcoin, that's a good thing. Now's probably a good time. I think 2024, if the SEC approves the spot ETF and it's also the Bitcoin halving, right, 2024, where traditionally that then is the onset of the bull run. So if that happens, then I think I'm going to put my next destination in here. Then the price will go up, so you can take profits. Let's just pause a second. And let's just pop the proper, where to, history, Southam now. Let's go to Southam, start new route. Yeah. Okay, it'd be interesting to see which way this takes me now. I don't want to get home too late when it's getting dark. However, it is quite beautiful around here, and I'm glad I took a detour. I don't really want to go up the A5 today. Done it too many times, including this morning. So the other topic I wanted to get onto, something I've been touching on a little bit in some of my other videos. If you look in my channel, you'll find a few videos on this, which is Bitcoin Ordinals, which is, as I understand it, NFTs without requiring smart contracts, basically, because the ordinal is stored at the Satoshi level. This is where, okay, the reality of owning one Bitcoin will become ever more elusive once these big players get into the game. It will become a rich man's club. But then boiling it down to the Satoshi level, so one Satoshi, or one Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis, and opening up the whole world of Bitcoin Ordinals, which is turning the individual Satoshi into a non-fungible Satoshi. So you could identify that Satoshi had been, I mean, this wouldn't be possible in Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet. That wouldn't be possible because nothing's ever moved out of his wallet as far as I know. Or maybe there were some early transactions that could be traced back to him. But let's say you had a Satoshi that could be linked back to Hal Finney, or what's the guy's name who did the Silk Road? Is it Ross Ulbricht? Oh, Ross Ulbricht. I can't remember his name. The guy who got done, who I think committed no crime, as far as I can see. He's like John McAfee. Just the system hated him because he'd managed to use Bitcoin in the way that Satoshi planned for it to be used in the beginning, and so they threw him away and put him in the dungeon and threw the key away. They should pardon him. If Robert Kennedy Jr., by some miracle, survives all the assassination attempts and ends up becoming installed as US president, then I wonder, he might pardon this guy, the Silk Road guy. You never know. But anyway, if you had a Satoshi that could be tied back to him, that becomes a non-fungible Satoshi because it's got some history, some attribute attached to it. And beyond that, with Ordinals, it's not just like the provenance of the Satoshi, but you can also start to associate audio and visual files like art and video, say, to the Satoshi, and then it becomes linked to an NFT. And that, in a nutshell, is what Bitcoin Ordinals is. I've done a couple of little videos on that. I've also done a little video on homomorphic encryption. Check that out as well. It's just a little short, but it just explains to you a little bit about Dero, which is a privacy token, which is a fungible token, right? Like Monero and Pirate Chain. Bitcoin supposedly is fungible. I'm not talking about Ordinals, just normal Bitcoin. But in reality, because it's transparent, it's not. So the feds can distinguish a coin that was used for legitimate purposes from a coin that was used to buy drugs. Not that anyone would use Bitcoin in that way now. They'd be crazy. The dark web guys would all, if they're sensible, would use Monero now. But that's just say, yeah, Bitcoin fungible inverted commas. What Ordinals does is makes it non-fungible, so that at the Satoshi layer, every Satoshi can be associated to an NFT without, as I understand it, without requiring smart contracts. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much longer. You can check out my other video about that. It's not very long. And then check out the links and references that I've got in that video that take you off to explain what Ordinals are, and a deep dive into crypto vigilante discussion on Ordinals. And invariably those guys always just seem to end up in talking about BSV, which I'm not a holder of, but it's a deep dive and it's quite interesting, so it's worth checking out. This is beautiful around here. And I think I might be almost up to the end of the things I was going to talk about. What else was I going to talk about? Might have to. I can't see my piece of paper too well, so I might have to pull over and just. Oh, Goodfellas. I also did a little short on Goodfellas. This was a like something that occurred to me, and I'm sure this analogy must have occurred to somebody else in the crypto space before, but I haven't heard anyone else use it. So I was kind of sort of a little bit proud of myself that I'd come up with this thought, really, or analogy, that the fiat system, the Keynesian economics system, the bankster system, is a bit like that scene in Goodfellas where the restaurant guy keeps getting harassed by the Joe Pesci character. He cracks a bottle over his head, and he owes him loads of debt and he won't pay it. And when he asks in front of his mobster friends, look, when are you gonna, settle your tab, cracks a bottle over his head, I think, and Joe Pesci, I think, does he pull his gun out? He says, don't embarrass me in front of my friends. So the restaurant owner is really scared, and he's really fed up of Joe Pesci coming in his joint and just bullying him and ripping him off. So he goes to the mobster, Joe Pesci's boss, and he says, look, this isn't good. And the boss says, so what do you want me to do about it? And the guy says, well, do I have to spell it out to you? He says, I'm asking you to come in as a partner with me on the restaurant, 50-50. So what he's hoping to achieve is that the mobster will protect him and stop Joe Pesci from dumping on him basically. You know the film Goodfellas, but if you don't, watch the clip on YouTube of restaurant scene where they burn the restaurant. I'm really giving it away a bit. So the mobster goes, yeah, alright, and yeah, 50-50, yeah. But because he's a crook, the restaurant owner gets a real raw deal. What ends up happening is they end up laundering through the restaurant, bleeding it dry. Every kind of criminal activity now going through that restaurant to the point where they're bleeding it dry, and in the end the only thing they can do is burn the restaurant and claim it as an insurance job. And at that point, I think the owner, the original owner, got the bowl cracked on his head. He's going, it's a damn shame. Like it's his family business. He's worked his whole life. Maybe he's got the business from his dad or something. But he finally has to agree to allow it to be burned down, and then they do the insurance job on it. I don't know if he gets any money out of it. It all goes to the mobster. And finally, the joint is burned down. I say I did a little short on that, but I just thought I'd go over it again because really that sort of illustrates the fiat system, what they're doing. Like the last time I checked on usdebt.org, Debt Watch, the US national debt had crept up to $33 trillion, staggering magic number as well. $33 trillion. They have no hope ever of paying that debt back. And the politicians that come in are not the ones that really rule. They're just cynics would say. They're just coming in as puppets. And most people don't have a clue about any of this, by the way. That debt is not possible to ever repay it. And yet, they have the money to spend 300 million per day for 2 decades in Afghanistan. And how do they manage to get that money? By borrowing from banks. Yeah? And then the debt goes up even more. I think if you rewind to not that long ago, not that many decades ago, the national debt of the US was only 1 trillion and it's crept up to 33. And the Afghan war and the COVID lockdowns haven't helped, to be honest. So I feel like I'm going to get really suddenly rained on. I need to get home. I need to get home. Ominous looking clouds now. So it's like that scene out of Goodfellas. All they're doing is the politicians are in for 4 years, 8 years at best. They carry on just playing the game, sucking as much out of it as they can, perhaps knowing that ultimately it's going to crash and it's just going to be a controlled demolition. And then if you enter into the world of hyperinflation, that's a super bad scenario. You know, you're thinking of the zombie apocalypse, basically. Because when people start running out of food, that's when it really gets dire. You know, if you thought like a Black Lives Matter riot was bad, wait till people are starving and they're tearing people limb from limb to eat them, which is a pretty gruesome scenario. It's talked about in the Bible, right? When Jerusalem was sacked by the Babylonians and the Jews who were trapped in the cities were starving. They ended up eating their own children. I think it's in the book of Lamentations. And all this kind of apocalyptic stuff is talked about in the book of Revelation in the Bible. So yeah, it's rather apocalyptic. I don't think the dollar system is going to collapse straight away. Who knows? It's anyone's guess for how long they're going to be able to prop this up. But see, the thinking is that it's like a controlled demolition. That basically, if you're starving, you'll be begging for the government to hand out soup and bread, and that's, you know, that's what some of these people are saying. That's where the government wants people to be, is CBDCs. I sometimes get the D and the B mixed the wrong way. Central bank digital currencies, where if you're a good boy, you get, I don't know, 100 quid onto your CDBC account, and you can spend that money for food, like maybe bugs or Beyond Meat burgers, because meat would have been phased out in this apocalyptic scenario. But if you're a naughty boy and you talk against the Big Brother government, then they could wipe that CDBC, or you could have a time limit on it where you have to spend it within a certain time. And this is why, like, all the Bitcoin people are saying that Bitcoin cures this problem, that Bitcoin is the fight against CDBCs, and actually, for the reasons I've mentioned, it's more likely that it would be a cryptocurrency like Monero, a privacy coin. But you know, if you believe in divine intervention, then maybe that's really ultimately the only thing that can solve this, because yeah, this debt problem is so huge. So that's what I was talking about. That, yeah, Goodfellas. I think that's all the stuff I was going to talk about. I might just pull over and see if there's anything else I wanted to chat about quickly before I try and get the hell out of here, because it's going to chuck it. Let's see what else I had on the agenda. Okay. Yeah, there was two other things. The other thing I was going to talk about briefly was, again with Dero, how Dero, the privacy coin, Homomorphic Encryption, have a look at my short video on that topic, is leading the fight against quantum computing and AI. But the feds want to use quantum computing to try and smash, I think it's Monero specifically, where they've offered a bounty to anyone who can crack Monero ring signatures. So far no one's managed to. With Dero, apparently you would have to hack each private key of every Dero wallet in order to compromise the Dero network and take over the Dero network, which is impossible to do as it stands now. So the Dero team is trying to make Dero quantum proof. And the deep dive, so my short takes you to another deep dive, which is another crypto vigilante video on that topic, where Raf is talking to the Dero guys. So the final thing I wanted to talk about is income tax, and there are those that say tax is theft. The Bible says you must pay tax in Romans 13 to the superior authorities. So I'm not going to get involved in that debate. Like, I've got to say, you know, I've just been to my mum's now in Milton Keynes, right? And my stepdad has really serious dementia, and it's got really bad now. And my mum see, we're not rich people. My mum receives help from the state. So she has carers who come round to help Mick get dressed in the morning, because he can't dress himself anymore. And she has help, right? And he goes to daycare to give my mum a bit of relief, and I think she does have to pay for a little bit of that, but it's also subsidised. So all of that, what I'm trying to say, all of that is taxpayer money. That's why it's difficult for me to say like what Jeff Berwick says, which is you should pay no tax. But you know, the counter argument is that those tax money, pounds and dollars, are going to finance illegal wars, like one that's going on at the moment, like the one that happened in Afghanistan and Iraq, where there were no weapons of mass destruction, where they were fighting the people that they armed to fight the Soviets, where they ended up retreating from and leaving $19 billion of hardware behind and spending $300 million per decade, you know. And they're saying, it's another beautiful little hamlet, look, if you pay into that system, then you're feeding the beast. So I get that argument, but what I was going to talk about is there are countries where, let's first go back to 1913, prior to the Federal Reserve. There was no income tax in the US, and it seems inconceivable, right? How on earth did that system work? But it did work. So I think how it worked is the tax you paid was on things you bought, and the good thing about that, it's nearer to what you would call maybe true capitalism, before capitalism was taken over and turned into communism with a capitalist veneer, I guess. That you pay tax on things you bought, but that you could decide what you bought. So in a sense, you can control to a certain degree the tax you pay. There was no income tax, and somehow that system worked. And also, they were unable to finance banks to wars, because wars are super expensive, and it's money that the government doesn't have. So the taxpayer pays for it, the government debt and lending. But what I was finally going to end with is, I believe, I need to research this, and maybe I'll put these up on the screen. There are still some countries where income tax is either zero, maybe Dubai, Middle East, you pay zero income tax, I think. I'll check, I'm not sure. Or maybe it's zero, or maybe it's very low, and apparently it can even vary. Like, you don't pay zero in America, but the income tax level can vary from one state to another, and I didn't realise that. So like, California is like ridiculous, that's why everyone's leaving. Elon Musk left, Joe Rogan left. But other states, you know, could be considerably lower. And the interesting one as well would be Liberland, right? I recognise this place, I think. Can I recognise this place? Looks familiar, maybe not. Anyway, Liberland, like the ANCAP place, and also be interesting to see the Argentina situation if that ANCAP guy there wins. Because he's going to, like, basically in Argentina, where they've had really bad inflation, because that's what happens with this debt that they can't pay back. They just raise interest rates, inflation. So inflation is a hidden tax on the poor and the middle classes. You know, what's this guy in Argentina going to do when if he gets in? Will he make Bitcoin legal tender and reduce income tax and go the route of Bukele in El Salvador, but also Liberland, which is going to be a pure ANCAP, tiny little new state? I don't know how they'll survive, because they're surely going to come under some serious attack from the existing power that wants to keep the status quo as it is. But if they somehow can muddle through, what will their income tax situation be? And maybe the wise thing is to move to a place where income tax is the lowest, government is the smallest, cost of living is the smallest, safety is the highest, and crypto is totally like legal tender, and all those things sort of form a perfect scenario where you can live cheaply, if such a place really exists. Although, you know, maybe somewhere like Mexico or El Salvador come close. So that's where I'm going to finish this vlog today. I think I've sort of covered off all the bullet points I wanted to talk about. Russell Brand situation, he's not backing down, is he? He could, I did think about this, that he could hang his boots up and, you know, he's done enough, I think everyone would agree. Just, you know, watch his family now and pull back, but I don't think he will. He's going to keep going until maybe they stop him, I don't know. But he's brave, I think, to keep going. So this is Cryptosmith out. I'm now going to enjoy the rest of my ride. Always amazing to see a farmer out on a Sunday night. Super hard-working guys, respect. Just going to enjoy this farmland back home. I think I'm getting nearer to home actually. And on that note, this is Cryptosmith out. Ciao.